awoke to a deafening silence that hung heavily in the air. The first light of dawn streamed through my bedroom window, casting eerie shadows across the walls. I rubbed my eyes and sat up, disoriented and groggy. It took me a moment to realize that something was terribly wrong. There was no usual hum of the city, no distant sirens, no chirping of birds. It was as if the world had fallen into a deep, unnatural slumber. I threw the covers aside and rushed to the window, pulling back the curtains. What I saw sent shivers down my spine. The bustling metropolis that I had known all my life had transformed into a ghost town. Skyscrapers loomed in the distance, their windows vacant, and the streets were deserted. My heart pounded as I raced downstairs to my apartment building's entrance. Outside, I walked the empty streets, calling out for anyone, but there was no response. Panic set in, and I could feel a cold sweat forming on my brow. I walked to the nearest cafe, where I'd always grab my morning coffee, but it was locked and dark inside. The chairs were upturned, and the abandoned cups of coffee had long gone cold. This couldn't be happening. I decided to head towards the city center, hoping to find answers. With each step I took, the weight of solitude pressed upon me. Abandoned cars cluttered the streets, newspapers lay scattered, and the wind carried the faintest echoes of laughter and chatter. It was as though the city had been swallowed by an abyss. My phone buzzed in my pocket, giving me a glimmer of hope. I fumbled to answer it, my voice trembling as I spoke to my friend Sarah. She was just as confused and terrified as I was. We decided to meet at our favorite park in the city, where we had spent countless hours together. The walk felt like an eternity as the emptiness enveloped me, each step echoing in the eerie silence. The park was just as desolate as the rest of the city. Sarah wasn't there yet, so I sat on the bench, waiting and watching. But as the minutes turned into hours, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. She had always been punctual, and her absence only fueled my anxiety. Had something terrible happened to her too? I paced back and forth, contemplating my options. I couldn't stay in this city any longer. I had to leave and find help, contact the authorities, or anyone who could explain this nightmarish scenario. Just as I was about to turn and leave, a soft voice reached my ears. "Hey there, what are you doing here?" I spun around to find Sarah standing behind me, a bewildered look on her face. Relief washed over me, and I ran to hug her tightly. She was the first person I had seen since waking up alone in this silent city. "Sarah, you won't believe what's happening," I exclaimed, trying to catch my breath. She frowned. "I know, it's so bizarre. I woke up to an empty apartment and I've been wandering around looking for someone, anyone." Together, we decided to explore further, hoping that we weren't the only ones left. As we walked, we shared stories of our attempts to contact friends and family, all met with eerie silence. The fear we felt was palpable, but having each other's company was a small comfort. In our search, we stumbled upon a library. The heavy wooden doors creaked open, and we entered a cavernous space that felt almost sacred. We moved between the towering bookshelves, our footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. It was here that we found an old, dusty journal on a table. The journal belonged to a man named David, who described a similar experience of waking up alone in the city. He documented his increasing despair and paranoia as days turned into weeks and there was still no sign of another living soul. His final entry was chilling, written in a trembling hand. "I can't take it anymore. I'm not alone, and they're watching me." A shiver ran down my spine as I read those words aloud. It was as though a heavy cloud of darkness had descended upon us. We knew we had to leave the library and continue our search, but anxiety gnawed at us. Were we truly alone? What had happened to the city? We left the library and made our way to the outskirts of the city. It was there, on a bridge overlooking the river, that we saw something that filled us with terror. A figure, cloaked in darkness, stood on the opposite side. We froze, our hearts pounding, and exchanged fearful glances. The figure beckoned to us, a slow and deliberate gesture. Fear surged through our bodies, but curiosity got the better of us. We cautiously made our way toward the shadowy figure, our footsteps echoing on the empty bridge. With every step, the figure seemed to draw farther away, maintaining a deliberate distance. "Who are you? What's happening here?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. The figure remained silent, but gestured for us to come closer. Its outline was hazy, shifting like smoke. As we reached the center of the bridge, the figure suddenly stopped and turned to face us. It lowered its hood, revealing an indistinct, featureless face. A cold wind swept through the area, and the world around us darkened. Fear clenched my heart as I realized that we were not alone in this nightmare. The figure in front of us was not human, but something otherworldly, something beyond my comprehension. I turned to Sarah, and her eyes mirrored the terror that gripped me. In that moment, the world shattered. The city dissolved into a swirling vortex of darkness, and I felt myself being pulled into an abyss. My last memory was Sarah's terrified scream as we were swallowed by the darkness. I awoke with a start in my own bed, drenched in sweat and gasping for air. The first light of dawn streamed through my window, casting familiar shadows on the walls. It took me a moment to realize that I was back in my own reality, my own world. The city was bustling outside, and I could hear the distant sirens and the chirping of birds. It was just a dream, a terrifying nightmare that had felt all too real. I rushed to call Sarah, relieved to hear her voice on the other end of the line. She had experienced the same nightmare and was equally shaken. We shared our vivid recollections of the eerily silent city, the journal, and the figure on the bridge. As the day went on, we both struggled to shake off the lingering unease that the nightmare had left behind. It felt as if the events of the dream had seeped into our reality, a sinister presence that refused to let go. We couldn't help but wonder if the nightmare was a warning, a glimpse into an alternate reality, or something else entirely. One thing was certain: the nightmare had left its mark on us. It had shown us a world where we were truly alone, where the city we had known had vanished, and it had made us question the boundaries of reality and the depths of our fears.